Cry It Out Loud, a podcast by Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
On this week's episode of Cry It Out Loud, it's called Maternal Care and Costs Out Loud. And it is with baby loss survivor Megan Reneau from Georgia. Thanks so much for joining us, Megan.
Hi, thanks for letting me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And, I'll let you tell about the history, but Megan has been our director of partnerships now for, oh my goodness, going on a year probably, right, Megan? Am I saying that right?
Roundabouts. I think the formality of it was a couple, like 7 or 8 months ago, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we're just grateful to have her. She's been helping to spearhead our efforts with state ambassadors and just getting baby loss survivors connected all throughout our nation. So can't thank her enough. But yeah, I just want her on here because this is something she's passionate about, and I'll let her tell her side of things.
Well, really what it was is I had my miscarriage in July of 2023. And as that being my first, it was a hard thing emotionally to process. And where I was just starting to feel a little bit more normal. We never go back to normal after that, but it was, your new normal. That was when the bills started rolling in from the miscarriage, from having to do the DNC, and because I was 12, 13 weeks along when I miscarried. And it was just a whole new, fresh reminder of everything. And I remember one of the first thoughts that ran through my mind were, why am I just getting these now? It had been like 2 months later after I'd already had the surgery. And for me, that was really, it was insensitive. Now I know that there's procedure. I know they have to run things through insurance, et cetera. Like, we understand that there's a procedure for that. But to me, it seemed tone deaf, like something that they needed to work on to make it to where it's as quick and efficient as possible so that survivors can move on with their grief. And that was what led me to finding Chasing the Rainbows, because there weren't a lot of resources for women who've had miscarriages, stillbirths, et cetera. And I'd actually been looking at starting my own nonprofit, and luckily enough ran upon Chasing the Rainbows information website, and I just loved what you guys had going on and just reached out, and now we're here. So it's been a beautiful journey. I have appreciated that.
Yeah. Oh, it's been, like you said, it's never something that we want someone to join our community for or anything, but we just do want everyone to find us as they're starting, so they don't have that same isolation and alone feeling like we both felt at, those beginning stages, especially of our grieving process. And like you said, it is a journey. And I think having others who get it alongside us is just so important. And I can't thank you enough, Megan, for giving everything that you have for our organization and spearheading a lot of efforts, and especially, bringing awareness around like we're going to discuss today, the maternal care deserts, the financial burdens that, we're left with when we have no baby to leave, with, and our arms are empty out of the hospital or medical practice. And, these are all topics that are so important, and kind of like the secondary losses that we don't talk about, on top of our main loss of our own baby.
Yeah, no, and I think these are the other things that people who haven't gone through these experiences don't know anything. They don't, and how could they? But at the same time, it's like, this is why this is such an important mission, because these are things that people who haven't gone through them don't know about, and they are important, and they do impact millions of people in our country, and yet we're not talking about it.
No, definitely not enough. And right, I think raising that awareness, us doing as much as we can at, Chasing the Rainbows with you on board, with, other volunteers, just to keep spreading the word is so important. I mean, that's really how, because I did not know any of this until becoming part of this community.
Mhm.
And since it does impact the 1 in 4 of us, let's just say, with combining miscarriage, infertility, stillbirth, any kind of pregnancy loss, baby loss, infant loss, and just combining it all, and we come down to it, and I mean, it's probably even more than 1 in 4, but we'll just stick with that number. And
Yeah.
it's like, how is this still happening?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's still happening because, you know, people are impacted by it and they kind of go back to their own lives, and instead of using that momentum, using that event to actually make impactful change, they just kind of get told by everyone around them in a way like, oh, it'll be okay, oh, you can just have another one, oh, the same things that we've heard in previous episodes, because I know you covered that before, where people say things to make it almost to minimize
Yeah,
the experience, the trauma. And I know that
absolutely.
that's people's way of trying to placate or console people, because people struggle with consoling others when they're going through a difficult time. But that sort of talk makes someone feel, oh, maybe I shouldn't be talking about this. Oh, maybe I shouldn't actually be as concerned about this as I am. And they just end up retreating within themselves instead of being like, no, no, this is not right. And so that's why we have maternal care deserts where you're having people who I mean don't have OBGYNs, don't have a hospital with a birthing ward, they don't have anything accessible to them within an easy distance. Um, and and that should be spoken about.
Absolutely. And it's crazy when you shared with me. I already knew, in the Midwest that there, was a lot of maternal deserts. We are trying to service all of those hospitals and OB clinics, but they're so few and far between with the distance. And you and I were talking pre-show, like we have accessible care all around us here in Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
and we choose to go to Maryland for our care, right? So we drive 2 hours round trip
Yep.
total. And, that to us for what the care that we're getting and everything is so important for us, right? And for that peace of mind. However, though, when you're not given that choice and let's say like your work doesn't allow you to take off that much time for appointments, or you have to get in a plane and go to somewhere, to access care, or it takes you like half a day or a full day just to go to the
Mhm.
doctors and come back. I mean, those amount of losses that happen based on not being able to get to a doctor's easily and accessible when something's going wrong is just heartbreaking in and of, on top of already thinking about loss in general and how, there's not enough research around it, but having this other dynamic and layer on top of it, it is heart shattering.
No. I know. And for people who don't know, March of Dimes did an assessment roughly in 2022 where they looked at across the nation the maternity care desert and what that means. And it means that there are no hospitals providing OB care, no birth centers, no OBGYN, and no certified nurse midwives. And they have a
Yeah.
map that shows primarily in the Midwest and like the South West and stuff like that are impacted the most by these maternal care deserts, which means that they're going to have to go to surrounding counties potentially, or even potentially some surrounding states. Because I know they were saying that Florida has seen an increase in maternal care, but Ohio saw the biggest decrease. Um, but
Yeah.
it's an eye-opening graph to look at and go, "Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that many people don't have access to care." And then you learn about the fact that there are still quite few high maternal mortality rates because of the lack of care. And it just kind of all ties in together where people need to understand, like, if you're going to deny people resources, that's gonna increase their desperation. Like and it's gonna cause them more undue stress, and then it's gonna cause them to have more complications during pregnancy, and it's kind of a cascading effect. And so
Yeah.
all and we're wondering why the birthing rates in the United States are declining. Well, that's probably a big reason.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's
No, and
sad.
that it is. Because I think about, especially thinking about pregnancy after loss too, and needing to have like I went in, my third trimester, especially like once I knew the baby was viable, I went in all the time to get checked to make sure something wasn't going wrong, because I was like, if something is, I want you to deliver, right? So
Yeah.
getting checked, getting ultrasounds, getting stress tests done, doing everything I needed to do to have that peace of mind. And I think about these areas, and it really it just breaks your heart. Like, I don't there's not even a right word or right way to say it. Then, they don't have this kind of care. And why is that? Like, why are we not doing more about this? And why is there, you know, not more, people flocking at hospitals and OBG clinics opening up to
Well,
help?
yeah. I think it's because, so I read some articles and they did say that in a lot of these states, these are the states that are supportive of banning abortion. And it does bring up a viable point that,
Mm.
just because you have to provide care despite not, if you want to ban abortions. If you want to ban abortions, that's a state by state basis decision, but you still have to provide care. You can't be laissez-faire about this. You can't try to sit back and be like, well, that's your problem. No, no, you need to be able to provide the citizens in your state the appropriate care that they need. So if you're seeing an alarming rate of birthing wards and practitioners leaving your state, then you need to actually start incentivizing it, and you need to start figuring out solutions. And that's the problem that a lot of them have, and that is a huge issue that they need to address. um, and I mean, the reality too is that we have to really be putting the health of these women first, like
Yeah.
putting aside our opinions about what should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. You should still, first and foremost, always prioritize the health of the mother and make sure that she's able to get the care that she needs. So if you're moving out of that state because you don't like that they're banning abortions, well, now you're leaving these women vulnerable, even more vulnerable than when you were there. And we have to start thinking about that Hippocratic oath, and we have to start thinking about putting other people first before ourselves and really making it selfless in that arena again. um, so it's hard because it's a multifaceted problem, and
Yeah.
there's not going to be any one solution, like best solution, but it's going to take people actually caring about putting women's health first to even get down that road, to start down that path.
Yeah. And you're right. They're up and leading, from all this political battles that are coming into play when it comes to women's health, right? And really caring for the maternal aspect of everything. And because, like, we both know, and our listeners out there, people are aware, like, pregnancy and birth don't go as planned, like,
Right.
more times than not. And so you look at that, and here we are not having or being able to have the right providers or have enough of them to service all of the women there. And I forget the number that I saw too. What was it that, oh, it was 6.9 million women who are in areas of low or no access that are affected by this. And it's mind-boggling. Like, we're still here in 2024. Well, I think this study was done in 2022, but I'm sure it's even
Yeah.
higher now. Who knows? I should make those accusations. But it's just so infuriating when you look at it.
Yeah. No, it's sad because you think, those are all women now who are alone. And from what we've known about speaking to women who are in these lower access care
Yeah.
areas, not only do they not have access to care, they also don't have really a great support like community around them either. It's usually all the same people who are like, oh, it's fine. Oh, you can have another one. Oh, whatever other platitude they want to throw at you. And then you get made to feel bad for actually grieving your loss. And
Yeah.
so we're having millions of women out there who can't get care and also now feel sucky that they want to get care in the first place. That is terrible.
Yeah. It's
I
completely
can't think.
isolating.
It
It
really
is.
is. So, and like I said, no wonder birth rates are declining because women are just like, I don't want to deal with this. Why would I? And that's a
Yeah.
great, it's a great, it's a sensible response. No one's going to want to go through that willingly if they get told, well, no, you don't really need to get care.
Yeah.
That's not right.
And it is that old school mentality with let's brush it under the rug and keep moving. And, you don't really have time to process and heal. And realistically, that is not grief. Like we are emotional beings.
Mhm.
And we need that space and that time because we're all different. And one survivor might believe that and need to live like that, which is fine. If you like need to continue to suffer in silence, like, or whatever, stuff it that because that's how they continue to go through their day. I get it. Like I understand. Like sometimes I just want to sit there in silence too and just like process it myself, not, be around others. But then I know when I do need a connection or I need to say something out loud and process something, I can do that with my community or of people. And because we're not, grief is so foreign in America. We all do a horrible, right? Like Americans in general just do a horrible job. So when
Yeah.
we're going through these kind of tough situations, almost others had to lie to themselves to get through it and, passing that on to us, like, other generations. It's so true,
Yeah.
Megan.
It really is a pendulum with grief in the United States. It's either you completely don't talk about it and you just shut down and you squash it down, or you're overly emotional about it in a lot of ways. And what we have to realize is we're creating that by making people feel like they have to choose one or the other. If we
Right,
create more spaces for people to grieve in a natural, healthy way, then more than likely people would be able to move on quicker, but move on in a more healthy direction,
yeah,
in a better way. But if until we can get to that point where we can actually provide that space for people to grieve in the right way for them, we're never going to actually improve. So that's
right,
why Chasing the Rainbows does a great job, because it does give women resources to actually talk about it, to journal, to breathe and you meditate and all these different things to help them guide them through that, which is why the mission is great. Like I why we all believe in it.
yeah,
So,
right, right. No, and yeah, it and it's so true. It really is. And like you said, everybody like they see this like that one side of the pendulum of some being over emotional because they don't have a place where they can go and talk about it and process it. And it's not even like it's just moving forward, right? And learning how to live again and also learning, how to grow bigger than our grief and all of those things or whatever, you want to say or how you want to say it. But it is trying to figure that out and then return to routine life, return to work, return out in public where we're seeing triggers, we're seeing things around us. And like we have to process that. It's tough and some don't and that's fine too, but those that do um and then so we're not stuffing it, it doesn't come out in an unhealthy way. Like you said, Megan, that happens too. And we don't want to see that. We don't want people to suffer by themselves when we're right here wanting to be beside them. Right.
exactly. Yep.
No, right.
So,
And it's true. I mean, so it's interesting, we are getting survivors from all 50 states, but the Midwest especially, we're trying to get into the OB clinics and the hospitals. So when they're leaving, they know who we are. And it's so much even more important for these desert areas where, losses are occurring a lot and, just to be there for them.
yeah. Well, really, I think, I mean, my potential solution to that is that it's going to require the state governments to get involved.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it would be the best step would be to do a joint state task force to address that issue, and subsidize and incentivize people to come out there and create these birthing wards, which, you can do an OBGYN birthing ward and pediatric office for aftercare for the mom and for the child. But it's like a specialty kind of office. But that's something for the future for people to, I would love to eventually have talks about that with some of the state officials. I think that is where we're going to actually start making a difference, is when people actually put their money where their mouth is and actually start moving, where they want to be and actually
Yeah.
provide this resource for women.
Yeah.
Um, but I think in the meantime, we're doing what we can, and I think that's all we can do. Um, but that also brings up the fact too that financial duress, it's that's the next kind of part of the maternal care deserts too, because then you think about the
Oh,
cost that's tacked on to get care if you're in a maternal care desert. So now, like you were talking about, you go to Maryland because of the care that you want to receive,
Yep.
but you could get it from where you're at, which is
Right.
great. And it's great that Pennsylvania made that concentrated effort to really start providing that, like make sure that that was there. But for
Absolutely.
those women who live in these maternal care deserts, now you have to factor on that they have to now travel, like you're saying, plane, drive, they have to take off work. Um,
Yeah.
and then not only to go do to pay for that, but then get the bill afterwards too. So
Yeah.
I know we were looking at numbers. The average cost of a DNC during the first trimester is between $4,000 and $9,000, um, which is mind-boggling. I mean, I again, we understand that there are certain costs associated and that people it's a service provided, but when you think about the fact that there's a lot of those charges that probably don't need to be happening,
Yeah.
or and then think about the double billing, like the normal hospital things that people have to go through on a daily basis anyways. Think about having to go through that after you just suffered a miscarriage and or stillbirth or anything else. You don't have your baby with you, you're grieving emotionally, and then you get slapped with a bill like this.
Yeah.
um it, it just it reinforces that grief and now puts financial burden on these women who are already trying to just survive day by day.
Yeah.
And now that is tacked on.
Yeah.
And I know people will listen to this and probably say something along the lines of, oh, well, you can't expect them to get free care. And it's like, okay, that might be understandable.
Right.
But I think that it brings up the bigger question about the profit healthcare system that we have, where people take advantage, especially of people who are going through difficult or stressful times. I mean, we already know that in regards to cancer, they very, those hospitals very oftentimes take advantage of people, offering them to do care and such that they don't necessarily need or is not going to actually really benefit them. And so the same can be said
Yeah.
about women who are suffering miscarriages, stillbirths, that they are taking advantage of them during this grieving time of their life because, it's easy money.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. It is ridiculous and mind-boggling, the bills that show up, when we are grieving, and it misses out on that, like, personal touch, with the hospital are, like, willing to work with people or work through, especially when these procedures is to save the mom's life, they're life-saving procedures. It's not, always looked at like that. And
Mhm.
also, it is so horrible, and you said this at the beginning, Megan, when you're getting those bills months after and you're seeing them come in, and then also things from the insurance carrier, things, and it's like it's just so matter of fact. Like when our daughter died, on our paper that came from the insurance carrier, it wasn't even like a sweet little like consulting thing, like right at the beginning. It was like Brooke's insurance is terminated because she died, period. And it's like, can you get any more insensitive? Like, wow, thanks a lot. And I wasn't expecting it, and it was about, like, 4 months after, and I it just, like, I wanna say or maybe 3 months, I don't know, I could be completely off with the timeline, but it was, like, it wasn't right after, so I wasn't expecting it. When
Right.
I opened it, well, at first, I think it was even addressed I don't know if it was addressed to her or to me, and, when I opened it, I was shocked. I was like, "Is this real life? Does this really happen?" And I know, I'm not the first, and that this happened to millions of women before me. And I'm like, there's just no, this just can't happen. Where's that human aspect?
Yeah, and I think that's where they have to. I agree, and they'll probably say something along the lines of they just had like their computers print this stuff
Yeah,
out,
generate it.
and exactly. But it's like you might want to think about actually, putting some procedure in place that takes that into account, depending on the situation. Like, you're right.
Yeah,
It's very insensitive, and you're not just a number. You're not just, a name on a paper. You're an actual human being. And I
yes,
agree that the healthcare system, the medical field in general, I think struggles to actually remember that and treat us accordingly. You know,
yeah,
uh, we've talked about it before off camera, but the fact that there's a lot of times that we understand that practitioners see these tragedies day in and day out, and we understand that they're trying to cope with it in their own way, because that probably does, yeah, at first it probably was very hard for them. And but they have to remember that, like you said, I think you said something so poignant. You said that might be the 10th for them today, but it's the first for me, or first for someone. That's the first time they've ever gone through a miscarriage. So they
Yeah.
don't know what to do next. And it
Yeah.
would be nice if medical practitioners remembered that we're not just a number. We are someone who is now facing something that we may have never encountered before in our life. And that is
Yeah.
now just going to drastically impact the rest of our lives. So
Right. Right.
it's hard.
And we're learning to live without our child now. At any stage and age, when we lose our child, it affects us. And yeah, Megan, yeah, I preach that all the time, just because, you know, it's like they have to continue to go to work. They give this news and then they need to continue to the next patient. And it is missing sometimes that, because they have to compartmentalize, I'm sure, to
Mm.
continue to move. And in different situations, it does take away that human aspect. And that's when the insensitivities come out from medical providers. And they say things like, you can always have another baby. And they're meaning, from a medical standpoint, you can try to get pregnant again and have another baby. I understand that. But the way that they're saying it, and saying it right after our loss, it's like, whoa, like, that's not the time or place. Like,
Exactly.
let me start to get my bearings from what you just said about not having a heartbeat, and then we'll talk. Um, and it's all of those, the events after, and it's such a trauma to the individual and to us, because it was our baby. And, you know,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I know. And so I think, this whole thing, it's highlighted like the entire process of having to go through any sort of baby or infant loss, or even, fertility loss. It's traumatic almost from start to finish.
Yeah,
I mean, and you take into account maternal care deserts, so not being able to find care readily. You take into account receiving really, extensive financial bills months after the fact,
yeah,
and then the incense. It just, everything together. We have to start thinking about ways of making the journey easier, and the
yeah,
journey more not palatable, but like processable,
yeah,
because all of these extra stressors are causing people to just, they said it, we're the most depressed, one of the most depressed generations that they've been able to record. That's saying something. And that
yeah,
means that we're not doing a good job of helping people, and which means we all need to pitch in, we all need to do our part, and we all need to actually start caring about one another
yeah,
again, and start putting ourselves in each other's shoes and going, I'm here for you. I may not know exactly what this is like, but I can have empathy, and I
yeah,
can start putting myself out there, even if it's, it doesn't have to be a lot, but volunteering is so important, because every little bit counts. If one person dedicates 2 hours a week, well, how many, that's hundreds of hours if you get hundreds of people, and
yeah.
that makes a difference. So I think we
It
can make
does.
change. We just have to have people being willing to start putting themselves out there for those opportunities to help others.
Right. And, you said it perfectly in the beginning too, Megan. Like, I had to put some purpose behind my pain. I couldn't just, like, people were like, like, buck up and keep moving. And it's not that. And, so to be able to have a place that is constructive and proactive and trying to make difference, make change, and really unifying us and uniting the baby loss survivors together. That's really, what we need and to do, so we don't have that one person out for themselves kind of situation. And the more we do that, the bigger voice we can have advocating for grief support, within our workplaces, and across everything. And then
Yeah.
also maternal health and care and all of that, and then costs. But it is all these secondary losses that people don't see necessarily that are happening, because we have this major loss right here of the baby, right, and our baby. And then, but all this around it all affects that too, and is affected by that. And, I felt horrible even trying to complain about any of this, because I was already having a hard enough time with the baby. But
Yeah,
realistically, the more we talk out about this, the more change we can make, the more, we can do all together.
absolutely. And I completely agree with you 100%. So it's one of those things, like, just the more we raise awareness, the more that people start, applying these changes in their lives, and start stepping forward and doing this. I think we'll see a lot of great changes. We just have to have that forward momentum. But
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for being on today, Megan. I can't thank you enough for our listeners and for everyone to get to know you and what you're doing with our organization, and having you behind and beside us.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to be here. And like you said, purpose for the pain. Like, that's what it's been about. And I'm really hopeful to see, more people, like, just coming together with us, and really speaking out about this, and making sure we can make effective change for all of these women, and actually supporting women. Like, that's what
Yes.
we really need, is everyone pitching in, and actually supporting each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like, women have paved the way before us. And, the only way I'm going to learn or to find my own way is by hearing others' stories and what they did, so I can figure out my own way of grieving and, my lifelong journey. So,
Yep,
right.
exactly. Well, thank you
Right.
so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. And thanks so much, listeners. Just make sure that you subscribe to our podcast so you can hear all of our future episodes. And thank you for tuning in. We are always with you, fertility loss, pregnancy loss, and infant loss survivors. Until next time. Thanks again, Megan.
Thanks.